Hello everyone, I have some bad news. We had a save issue, I think? Yeah, we got a save issue. So we've been bumped back 6 episodes, which I found rather frustrating. And it looks like I've lost, I don't know, I had this problem once before recording. It wasn't on camera, but where I had a little hard time recovering my save. It bumped me back to episode 5-ish, I think. But I was able to just fidget around until I recovered it. This time, no such luck. So this is just going to be our finale, and I'm going to give my final thoughts on the game. And I'm sorry for the people who were super excited about it or anything. I don't know, we can talk about it like an extra live stream or something like that. I'm also going to do Galactic Civilizations 3. It's gotten some expansion packs since the original LP, so I think we might revisit that one for people who are really into 4X and outer space. So we'll have some of that on the horizon. So yeah, the rest of this video is just going to be the game paused, and it's going to be my thoughts. Stellaris, it's kind of weird. It had, you know what, I'm even going to take a minute to search this up while the recording's going, because it's in a weird spot. Like it's got a 79 on Metacritic and generally positive there, but on Steam people are just ripping it to shreds right now, and it's complicated, and I can kind of see why it's a divisive game. I would not describe it as fun. It isn't, but it's interesting, which is kind of the same, so it's not like it's disengaging. And contrary to what is sometimes said, and I think people mostly say it because they're sort of just speaking in simplicities for speed's sake, games don't have to be fun. They have to be valuable. But, you know, you can have something that's fun, like Overwatch, where it's like a candy, or you can have something like this War of Mine, where it doesn't make you feel good, but it sort of has a different goal that it's trying to accomplish. And it's also trying to be interesting and also kind of like a negative emotional experience. So I'm fine with that. This is... there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. Other weaknesses of the game, I would say, are it's kind of unclear what I'm supposed to do. Like, I get, yeah, you're supposed to take over the world, Pinky, but why? You know, like, I don't know, it just, our explicit motivation isn't really clear, and I'm sure I could read it in one of these things, but it should just be really transparent. Like in Master of Orion, you're trying to become the Master of Orion. That's like a tentative goal, and then these other people are competing against you for it, and then, you know, sometimes there's Antarans showing, like they sort of have game mechanics propelling the end goal. In this one, it's just you form a super alliance, or you kill everyone, or you can colonize 40%, and like those are all emotionally a little distant, I would say. You know, I want to take over the world. That's, you know, got a certain clarity to it. I want to control 40% of the world's landmass, you know. On the other hand, though, it's nice that they don't force you to mop up everything. So, yeah, I would say the game right now is suffering just from lack of polish and clarity, and I think that just sort of reflects that Paradox is sort of a little bit new to this space. A lot of people who really like Crusader Kings and Europa would be like, well, grand strategy games are just a bit like this, but you know, that's only a partially valid point to make, I think. they may be like this, but you still need to make your game transparent to a certain extent. With the other games Paradox has made also, they have built-in personality. By saying you are France, you instantly have the theme is automatically applied, I guess is how I would say it. Like, okay, you have this country that was really powerful at the time in this setting, and has this rich culture, and then like crazy political dynamism to it, where you can go from like a monarch to an empire to a democracy in like a really narrow stretch of time. Like you got some interesting stuff going on. The factions in this game, they don't have that. They're just randos. And they were trying to create a really flexible system, which I think is a really good thing. The trade-off they made is that they don't really have any clear personality. And the best example I can give it of this is, so let's say we're talking about Final Fantasy or D&D or just an RPG where there's classes. World of Warcraft, it doesn't matter, there's classes. And, sometimes there's groups of classes, like, someone who does like buffs and debuffs, or a healer, or a tank, or a DPS. Like, we have these groups. Now, the downside of it is you kind of get pigeonholed. Like, if you're a tank, you're not going to be able to really heal. That's just because you're not a healer. So everyone sort of gets stuck in this caste system. But the trade-off is, if you play games that have no class, you can do whatever you want. Everybody sort of gets like this amorphic jelly-like quality to them, where everything's like kind of similar to other things in the game. So that's sort of a downside to it. You might think like, oh yeah, you can make classes if you want, or you can do totally different things. Like, for example, Final Fantasy 12, the original version of it. But everyone's kind of, you find the best attack, and then everyone does it all the time, and you lose the individuality. So I'd say Stellaris has a little bit of that with its faction system, where they're all kind of like, I don't know, none of them really feel like anything. I think to Master of Orion 2, which I am not putting on a pedestal, but when the Anterans showed up, or when you found out you were like narrating with the Silicoids, you're just like, great, these guys, you can't even make a trade treaty with these jerks. You had just sort of like these emotional responses, or the Clacon, or pardon me, yeah, the Clacons, it would be like, oh man, they're just I gotta keep my eye on them because they can make a really big industrial base. And the idea of it's kind of cartoony, but by having giant ants, and they're busy like ants, they just had some piggybacking of all these existing ideas. Stellaris doesn't really do that. So what we're left with is this sort of intellectually stimulating game with kind of a slow pace to it, which is characteristic of grand strategy games. I played 16 episodes, I think, and nothing has really happened yet. It's also a little bit hard to play in the sense that it's hard to make things happen. So all of those are sort of pushing the pace of the game down a bit, but I don't view that as an inherently bad thing. That's an issue of preference. Because if I wanted a fast-paced version of this, I can already play Sins of a Solar Empire. It's the lightning round version of it. This is not even Jeopardy. This is just like the slow-paced version, which can be nice when you want something a bit slower. It's more like reading an old book rather than watching an episode of 24, and there's a huge space for that. So I'm not going to say that like it's a negative, and I hope that is communicated. Music is really good. It's kind of all over the map. We've got the Blade Runner sound, you got the Star Trek sound, sort of the majestic orchestral, and you got the Interstellar, sort of this creepy mysticism of space sort of sounds. So that's kind of cool that it has multiple angles to it. The way they handle technology in the game, I think, is kind of interesting. I generally don't like super RNG heavy things, and they have weighted RNG in this one. It's worth doing. A lot of people are trying to solve the problem in 4X games of having, a best tech that you have to research. And one of the solutions I've seen in mods of Orion 2, for example, is, okay, well, everyone gets the automated factory and they never get the other two techs you could research. So one solution is to make it so automated factory is the only tech on that level. I think that's kind of lame too. So what's the point in researching it if everybody's going to get it and it's going to cost the same and everybody has to do it to move on to the next things? Just take it out of the game. Like, make it a passive bonus. It just needed to be rebalanced, which is what Conquer the Stars did, which I thought was a good solution. They sort of adjusted the wild scale of Master of Orion 2, which, you got to be careful with stacking multipliers. Something Stellaris does a good job of it too. These are very restrained bonuses. It's good. That said, the RNG based, card selection, I would be cool if it was RNG based, but you didn't lose them if you didn't research them. It forces interesting decisions, though. It's just, you want to give the player control over their own destiny, and it doesn't make sense to me that every time you would be giving up a research possibility. I think you could make a game of it where, let's say you get 3 research cards. You can research one, you can preserve one, and you have to discard the other. I think that would be more interesting. You could remove an element of RNG, still preserve an element of RNG, but then also there's this idea of still keeping an interesting choice. Right now, the other 2 are getting shuffled away, and you might never see them again, or see them for a long time. And I mean, it took me a while to get some tile clearing. Research seems to be a bit slow in the game, at least in the early going as well. Overall, though, not a bad system. I like how they have separate pools. I like how you're doing synchronous research. I really like that a lot. No one's done that since Master of Orion 1, or at least no major games I've played. The idea that you're always focusing on one tech always seemed really unrealistic. There's just one day where your empire fires every biologist and hires every physicist in your empire. It always seemed kind of people dedicate their lives to learning this one thing and then you just throw it away. What else? Diplomacy? Nope. The ship designer? So, ship design is also a thing 4X games always seem to struggle with. A lot of them use, so you can go the super detailed approach, like a game like Star Drive, where you just sort of have a grid and you put actual guns, and it's like Lego building a ship, and putting as many guns on it as you want, and you sort of try creating a balance system there. That takes a ton of work. For some people, ship design is really fun, but the problem is you kind of start designing very similar ships, or they have very similar themes. So I think that's a bit of an overkill. Also, I mean, you can counteract that by allowing you to save ship designs from game to game, but the technologies you're going to have and the situation you're going to be in are always going to be super or slightly different. So I've never really used that. Some games have some sort of ship template building. I've never really seen a super great implementation of that either, and I've played a lot of these games, more than just the ones I Let's Play. I mean, there's all sorts of ones that don't make the cut. Sorry for all those people who keep wanting me to upbeat their game. Anyway, this one, so we've got the slot system. It's similar to Sword of the Stars, or got a really general similarity to the Master of Orion system. Just you can only have 3, but it's kind of the same idea. I don't think. Sorry, one more. I guess this has a really general similarity to endless space as well. I don't think this style works particularly well. You don't get a ton of flexibility. The math didn't really ever make sense to me. So it's like you can have 3 smalls, or you can have 2, or a medium and 2 smalls. 1 medium is exactly equal to 2 smalls. Well, what's like that doesn't make any sense to me, you know? As they say, a difference that doesn't make a difference isn't a difference. You know, it's like, oh, you can pay $2 to have 2 8-ounce drinks, or $2 to have 1 16-ounce drinks. Which would you prefer? Even that has more of a difference because of pollution and surface area to volume ratio. Anyway, and splitting with a friend, that's easier with 2 cups. I mean, even that's a more interesting dilemma than this one, where the ships are virtually identical. Do you want 5.46 damage per second or 5.48? What a head scratcher. So there's also not a ton of difference between the weapons, at least in the early going. I know once you start factoring in missiles, and they can circumvent some defenses, and there's a bit of a rock paper scissors mechanic, but I don't think of that as particularly interesting. A pet peeve I have, and games I like do this. Age of Empires did it like crazy. Sins of Solar Empire does it, where they just say, this beats that. You have lasers, they beat mass driver cannons. Why? If they just say, if you're shooting someone who has mass driver cannons and you have lasers, you do 50% more damage, I think that's stupid. It's better when the benefit is implicit. So you have better range than they do. That's why it helps. So mass drivers, hey, one thing that would make sense is they wouldn't be as effective against fighters because they have greater travel time than a laser beam, which would be instantaneous. You know, any radiation-based beam would travel at the speed of light, so you're basically going to hit anything you can, you know, point the gun at. That'd be really great for shooting down fighters. Something like a mass driver cannon, maybe you're packing a lot of kinetic energy into there, but there would be some travel time. In Mu 2, they say, oh no, travel is so fast. It's relativistic, so it's basically instantaneous. But, you know, there'd be kick, and there'd be maybe some accuracy concerns with it. So you can have this implicit difference, and you don't have to have an artificial mechanic on top of it. So their weapons are kind of have this interchangeable thing. It's yeah, they all kind of feel the same in one way, and then where it doesn't really matter what equipment you put there, and then maybe that gets better later on in the game, but early in the game it meant nothing. And you contrast that to a game like I'll bring it up, Master of Orion 2, where the decision to go with laser cannons or nuclear missiles both are available super early, and they make really big differences to how you play. That's a good thing. It's a really good thing. Missiles, they don't have unlimited ammo, so you're putting all your eggs in the basket of a short fight at range where they don't have good point defense, but you can totally slaughter them if you get those conditions. Laser cannon, boy, you know, you got better hope you have some good accuracy, or you have shields or something, and then you're sort of going for a more drawn out encounter. It's great. And the rock, paper, scissors comes down to the decisions you made constructing your ships, not the arbitrary game mechanics saying A beats B, B beats C, C beats A. Anyway, so this all sort of sounded super negative. The general conclusion on that is just the design doesn't feel like you can change quite enough. That'd be my criticism. And, you know, the combat you just sort of watch as well. It feels like, because you can sort of choose when you retreat and so on, it feels like you have a bit more control than Endless Space, for example. Although in Endless Space, you're sort of picking these cards, but those are kind of blind decisions you're making, so I'm going to say that has almost no influence. So the combat and that it's going on in real time is kind of nice. Anyway, those are overall thoughts on the game. Sorry that you didn't get to see continuation or anything. Hopefully it was an interesting thing. Post in the comment section if you disagree with what I'm saying. Don't believe the hype on Metacritic. 79. Oh, it's a shame. There's probably somebody working there who has a bunch of bonuses tied to it getting an 80, and they're just cursing the one, defunct magazine critic who gave them a 7 and pulled the average down. Yeah, so don't buy the hype, don't buy the hate either. This is, in the 4X space, any comparison with this game, like, there's just not really anything like it. Even something like Distant Worlds doesn't really feel the same. Oh, I'm gonna crap on one thing though. The UI is terrible in this game. Aesthetically, a little out of touch with the present. Doesn't really, looks like websites that were trying to be cool in 2005, which would be fine if you totally embrace that aesthetic. But things that matter more, I click on my home world. You don't always, at the right zoom level, I get New Luna, but not the home planet. That's ridiculous. That should be fixed. That's all. Lots of criticisms like that. Font selection, not a huge fan. Do love Gothic fonts, but still, you gotta be careful on that sort of thing. And then we got that, yeah. Sorry, I just had to tag that on at the end because I was like, oh yeah, I didn't mention the UI. Was not a fan. I think that's it. See you in the next Let's Play, everybody. Sorry that I had to end like this. I know I could probably do some sort of interaction with my Steam profile and pull... Well, actually, it would only be 1 or 2 episodes ahead because of when my recording sessions were, but we're just going to throw in the towel right now. Sorry for those of you who are waiting for the 90-episode LP as I conquer the galaxy. But yeah, we'll do Galciv 3 in the near future, and hopefully that'll scratch your itches. That's how we're ending it.